It's
gonna be a day.
I know it's gonna be a day. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Happy daily drop-in. Holly and I are already joking because I clicked the wrong button, and that's just where we are, people. It's 6 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. Eastern, and Holly and I are so ready to kick off your morning with Daily Drop-In. Don't forget, guys, every single morning when we're here, throw your hellos, your good mornings, where you're watching from in the comments. We are talking all about communication this week, and we have some good news for you. It is a big day of celebration today, Holly, that I'm very excited to share with you. And there's just so much more in store. So we'll be right back, but get your coffee ready, take a breath, just to share your love in the comments. Holly's already in her classroom. We'll be right back. Holly, do you have your cup ready for our?
I do. I've got there we go. You can see my caffeine mug.
What's the coolest coffee cup? Wait, before we cheers, can you tell us about that coffee cup?
Yeah, so it's on one side you can see it's modeled to be like a beaker.
Yes.
And then it's got the molecular formula for caffeine on the other side. So you're a science teacher, right?
I think you're such a cool nerd, Holly. I'm so impressed. All right, everybody, cheers. Good morning. We're thrilled that you're here. We already have people in the chat. We can say good morning to Alex. Jeff Gargas is in the house. So good to see you. Holly, I love that you're somebody that seems to be live quite frequently. You've joined Brain Break a bunch, Daily Drop-In. These are all really fun things. You've joined us for our Twitter chat recap that I know before. So I feel like our family probably knows who you are. But before we get too far in, because I always forget this part, will you tell us a little about yourself? Like, what do you do in education? How are you connected to the team? All that stuff.
Sure. All the good stuff. So,
all the good stuff.
Yeah. So I am Holly Stewart. I teach 8th grade science and design. So I'm in an IB middle school. So I have both of those content areas in my class, which is really awesome because it means we get to learn about science and we get to build things and design things. So we get to be scientists and engineers, which is a lot of fun. This will be my 6th year teaching 8th grade. So I'm very excited about that. And I was fortunate enough to be in the same classroom, so I didn't have to move classrooms. So that's a big bonus.
Yes.
And I have been, I started really connecting with the team with the whole shutdown back in, February. Well, when everything kind of started back February, March of 2020 is when I started joining these daily drop-ins, which was, that was a lot of fun to be able, because that's really where I connected with you guys. And then just this past spring, I became a Teach Better ambassador. So I'm very excited about that role. And Ray, like you said, I just, every time someone's like, do you want to come on live? I'm like, yes, please.
Yes, every time. Because you're just such a fun person to talk shop with. Like, even, I know this is strange, but even before, when we were talking, before we went live, you're just like such a wonderful educator. You always are solution seeking and focused, but you also can laugh and have fun. And every time I saw this morning on my calendar, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going live with Holly. Like, I'm not nervous. It's going to be just a ball of fun for the next hour. No big deal.
Well, it was funny because I heard you talking about, last week, you're like, okay, and here's who's coming up. And you were talking about this, this educator named Holly Stewart who was going to be on, and she does this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, wow, I need to get to know this person who has my name because she sounds wonderful. Because clearly she's not talking about me.
Oh, you are so stinking cool, Holly. I love it. This is going to be so much fun. And I appreciate you showing your background because it's funny. I think there's a lot of faces in the Teach Better family, depending on how everyone's connected, right? If you pop in our admin mastermind on Tuesdays, if you joined as an ambassador, if you're an active listener in our podcast network, you kind of get to know all these faces and you get to know names, but sometimes we don't put them together, or sometimes you don't ever get to actually see them in real, live time, like you are now, live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. So it's just kind of fun to always make those connections for our networks because everybody interacts virtually, and yet we all feel like we get to know each other so well. And I love that about our little family here.
It's great. It really is. And that's the thing too, because I know when I first started, I was kind of one of those lurkers, as you say, in the background with the daily drop-ins. And then I was like, I'm gonna type in good morning and see. And Jeff was like, hey, Holly's here, and I was like, wow, he acknowledged me. And I wasn't like, told you can't type in here unless you are with the team. So,
We love the participation. I have to tell you guys, like, it makes going live more fun. Like, obviously for Daily Drop-In, our goal is to get your morning started and, share some positivity and brainstorm really relevant topics that hopefully you can take an idea in the morning and implement it later that day or later that week. I mean, the whole goal is just to be here for the network, but it makes it so much fun when we're live to be able to see you guys active in the comments. Because I guess I don't mind talking to a stagnant video, and I guess there's some value in that depending on what you're talking about, but it's so much more fun to start off your morning like with the family. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And Alex, I see your comment there about is it insulated? No, it is not. So it does have a handle here. So I have to be careful and make sure I'm holding it correctly.
Yeah, Alex comment here for those of you listening on the Teach Better Talk podcast after the fact, which we really appreciate as well. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review Teach Better Talk podcast, but is asking about the coffee cup. I'm telling you, if you're listening on the podcast, this is what the only downside. I will tell you, every so often there's something visual that like you're gonna have to like leave the podcast and go Google what it looked like. Your coffee cup is one of them, Holly. That is a good thing.
I love it.
So fun. We have a ton of people here this morning. It's always so good. I know Debbie's here. I really appreciate these updates. Like when somebody comments saying good morning, but then tells us what their day looks like. It looks like we have somebody in our Facebook group that's getting ready for sub training today. Holy cow. We are so appreciative of our subs, guys. Subs are going to be, not only have they always been invaluable, but so important as we continue throughout the year. So shout out to whatever sub training you're going through, whether it be to get an update on what subs look like this year, if you're a classroom teacher or an administrative leader, or maybe you're going through yourself a sub training. This is really good. We appreciate it. That's awesome.
Yes. Thank you very much to all the substitutes out there. Yes. 100%.
Holly, I don't know. I know we're not even on topic because we have other things to talk about today, but I don't know how you feel about like people friend requesting you on Facebook. I don't know how, I don't know the rules on that. I feel like I know social media pretty well on Twitter and Instagram, at least well enough to like know what's appropriate. I don't really get Facebook, but I really like it, I guess. I've had it the longest. But Karen Evans just Facebook friended me, and it was like a big deal. I'm so excited. I don't know if that's weird, but I was so excited waking up in the morning and being like, yes.
Well, yeah, because there are some people you're like, oh my gosh, they want to be my friend, because it's like people that you've heard about and you know about, and it's like, wow, yes, we can connect in another way. Absolutely.
Right. It's so fun. And I feel like we always encourage everybody in our network to like, oh, go follow us on Twitter. Oh, follow us on Instagram. But like Facebook, I only get occasional friend requests from the network. Typically, it's more like family and friends. But I was like, yes, we're official, Karen. We're official. Thanks for the Facebook friend request.
Yeah, I have like my social media is very much like different pockets for them. So Twitter is like my education place. Facebook is the, family pictures and all that kind of stuff to keep my mom and dad happy so that they can see pictures of their grandkids. I know it's not to see pictures of me, but it's to see pictures of the grandkids. Yeah. And then Instagram is where I just put all of my nature pictures and stuff like that when I'm outside and all that. That's where I post all of those. So I have very separate pockets.
Well, and I think the separate pockets is good because I've heard that's super common, especially when I do like any sort of coaching with educators that are trying to like figure out their social media game. We even have a course in Teach Better Academy to like get people started with being active on social media and making connections and sharing content. But Holly, don't you feel like, so here's my question, I guess. If you have 3 different platforms they use for 3 different things, are you okay if people follow all 3? Or is it like, oh, I really only want educators to follow me on Twitter? Like, how does that work?
Well, honestly, I figure, I don't mind if people want to follow me and see all the crazy things that my family does. They certainly can, Yeah. But yeah, that doesn't really bother me if people are overlapping on them. It kind of helps them to see more of the complete picture of me too. I'm not just a teacher in a classroom. I'm someone who has a life outside of the classroom too. So
I do kind of like that, Holly. Like it's always fun to connect with educators. I love talking shop, but I think something I really value about the Teach Better family is getting to know educators as more as educators. Like I love seeing pictures of your family and, like nature photos. I think all that, it's kind of helpful in terms of getting to know the person behind the profession, because I really think that teaching is not just a career field, it's a lifestyle, right? Like we're teachers 24/7, but the reality is we all have hobbies, we all have families, we all have, workouts that we like to do, and sharing some of that just lets you in on a little bit more of what their life looks like. I like that stuff. So
exactly.
Anyway, Karen, thanks for making my day and friend requesting me. That was super cool. Anyone else on here? Let's connect on social media so we can keep our conversation going. Holly, is your handle the same on every social media?
Yeah. I was able to grab that Holly A. Stewart on Twitter, Instagram, Voxer. It's all Holly A. Stewart. So
I love this. Well, guys, we want to connect with you. So I don't know how we got on this topic. Oh, it was Karen's fault. Karen, you got us off track. Shame on you. But let's all connect on social media so we can keep it going. I feel like my content is kind of similar. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I share way more personal stuff on Instagram, like personal life stuff. Twitter, I think I keep more like streamlined education conversation. And then Facebook's kind of a mishmash of a lot of different.
And I think it's like you said, because you had that one the longest. Yeah. So that has the most stuff mixed in there. Because I have some education stuff in there on my Facebook feed too, but it is mostly family and friends. So.
Yeah, everybody, I have a few comments commenting in that ever kind of use social media different, and that's good. That's okay. That's great. So just interesting. Anyway, Holly, we have a lot to celebrate today. We have some good news. I have a big holiday that we need to acknowledge today that I think everybody should change their plans for. So should we get into our good news segment?
Let's go.
Let's do it. All right. So, Holly, it is August 12th, and there are a lot of things to celebrate on August 12th. I don't know if you guys know this, but there are a lot of silly holidays every single day. And we want to start highlighting them on our daily drop-in good news segment. And one element is that I was reading through all the different things, all the holidays for today. And while there are a few, that's like national something or like annual something else, I feel like we need to celebrate the fact that today is World Elephant Day. How do you feel about elephants, Holly?
There you go. I think we should celebrate them. It was funny that yesterday there was a podcast that I was listening to, and they were actually talking about elephants, and somebody they were trying to figure out what kind of feet elephants had. And I was like, I'm pretty sure elephants have toes, but because they were like, do they have hooves? Do they have feet and toes? So I'm pretty sure it's toes though, but
there you go. So that was the world setting you up to celebrate national holiday of elephants today. And I love that Alex is commenting with some elephant emojis. That's so good. I love elephants. I won't lie to you. I feel like I have on my bucket list, I really want to pet an elephant. I don't know how that works. I know that may not ever happen in my lifetime, but I love elephants. I don't know that it's my favorite animal anymore. Like growing up, that was like the go-to. I've kind of widened my perspectives now. I have lots of favorite animals, but I am an elephant lover. I love watching like documentary on elephants. I'm kind of a nerd that way. So I'm good to celebrate any fun holiday that has to do with elephants. I think that's a good one.
There we go. Yeah, like those Planet Earth kind of shows and everything that show them actually in the wild and all that. I love that kind of stuff too.
Yeah. I love that stuff too. Yeah. Dave Schmidt's in the house. Dave, I know you just popped in here. Can you tell us your opinion on elephants, Dave, in the comments? That would be helpful. We're really eager to know your thoughts on that one. While he comments in the comments, Holly, our good news story today has to do with Legos. Do you use Legos? Tell me more.
I love Legos. So like one of the things I do at the beginning of the year is it's called a block challenge. And I, have my students figure out, how to be able to build things with Legos and how to communicate with Legos. And I mean, there's a whole vocabulary associated with them, being able to identify the different pieces, the 1x4 or the 2x3 and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, love Legos.
I love Legos. I have to say there's so many elephant emojis coming in the chat right now from everybody watching. I don't think there's a Lego emoji. I'm so sorry, guys. Good luck trying to figure that one out. Look on your phone while we're talking because I don't know if there's a Lego emoji, but I will tell you, I thought this was interesting because it's talking about how Lego bricks are not necessarily good for the environment. And so they're making a wooden alternative that biodegrades. And so this was kind of a project they took on during the pandemic. They're calling it a pandemic pastime for the company Lego. But now they are looking at actually making it accessible and like sharing it with the public. So it looks just like a Lego block. They actually posted on Instagram just a little bit ago. And it's made out of sustainable source wood instead of plastic, so it's not so terrible for the environment. The company says it sources materials from trees that are typically cut from forest trimming, thus that they're too small to use for architecture or furniture design. So making Legos kind of fits for what they're trying to achieve. It says, according to the company, the blocks are made from a few different types of tree species, including maple, birch, and cherry, resulting in blocks with different colors and textures and even different scents. The color palette of cream and toffee wood is sustainable and refined. And so they kind of go through the fun of being able to do that. Obviously, the price point is a little bit different, but they're beautifully designed. I love that wood look. And I would love to see these go into classrooms. I think that there's so many fun ways we can use Legos in our classrooms.
Oh, absolutely. And I love like blocks and especially wooden blocks. There's just something about that texture, whatever, something about it. But yeah, and I love the idea of making Legos out of wood. And I'm just like, my brain is already going, like you're talking about the different kinds of wood have different kinds of densities. You could use those in the classroom and, do a whole study on density using the Lego blocks. I mean, that would be awesome.
Well, and it's so funny. I feel like it was a few days ago that I presented a good news story. I think it was Jeff Gargas who was giving me some grief. He's like, is this good news? How does this work? I think this segment should be like interesting stories to spark conversation that aren't negative. I guess that's like where these segments are, because for me, I don't know that that's a good news story in terms of like inspiration. I did have one of those too that I can share if you guys want to hear a little bit about Froyo. But I will tell you, I thought it was so interesting, such an easy topic to discuss. People love Legos. And I think it is a good news story that during the pandemic, Lego allocated some resources to find a sustainable model rather than plastic. I think that is, celebration, good news worthy.
Yeah. And see, that's the thing though, is like just looking at the different words that we use. Good. What does it mean to you? Right. It can be just only something that's motivational and inspiring, or it could just be something that makes you happy and makes you smile, and Legos make people smile. And so I think that's great.
That's true. I think that Legos are wonderful. I love using Legos, and they actually were a sponsor in my classroom for about 7 years. So I have a soft spot in my heart for the Lego Corporation. I really appreciate all the people over there. I will say, if that didn't fill your cup in terms of inspiration, this wasn't so much a news story as just a story that was published, but it was recently published in the Sunny Sky magazine. And it's more of just a story of somebody sharing about somebody doing a good deed for them. So I thought I would share this as a little bit of an addition. It's called Froyo. The article says, it's very short, it's only a few paragraphs. It says, I was crying pulling into a parking lot spot after having a really long day. I got myself together and caught a glimpse outside of my door of a teenager and a father walking next to my car while I was crying. I was so embarrassed. I wiped my tears. I took a moment. I went in to go get ice cream. And when I came back from the Froyo spot where I ordered my ice cream, right next to my car was a $10 bill with a note that says, your Froyo's on us. We hope that tomorrow is better in your day.
Aww, that's so great. Yes. That's wonderful to know that there are people out there who will do those kind of things and not do it to try and get recognition. I think that's great.
Yeah, I really love that element of like not getting recognition, like doing it truly in a selfless manner, truly just for someone else. You see this kind of sometimes in fast food restaurants or at Starbucks, where the person in front pays for the person behind them. And then by the time the person behind them realizes that their meal or beverage was paid for, that car is like gone, right? That they leave already and there's no way to really say thank you. And so then it's this mentality of like, oh, I'll pay for the person behind me then. And it kind of is this beautiful ripple effect. And I always love seeing little pay it forward, little things like that, little pick me ups that, of course, $10 is valuable. We're not encouraging you to give away your hard earned money. We understand that that takes time and you have expenses to pay for, but those little things, whether it be, 50 cents here or $5 here, whatever you can allocate, is such a wonderful way to make someone's day without really doing much. I don't know how to phrase that.
Yeah. I use, so we call it Falcon Time, but in our morning, like our home base kind of thing, I play CNN 10. So it's that student news channel just to kind of help my kids see what's going on outside of, the world of, where they are right here in the classroom. And there was one story last year, and I don't know if anybody else had heard it, but I'm pretty sure it was at a Chick-fil-A, that it was like one of those things where it went on all day and people just continued. And it was amazing to see that it wasn't just, one person did it and everyone was like, okay, good, great, done. It throughout the whole entire day. I thought that was awesome.
Oh my gosh. It's because it's not to be negative, but like someone eventually stops it, right? Like someone eventually says, oh, I got my meal for free. Thanks so much. And moves on. And maybe even doesn't think to say, can I pay for it? Because I don't even know that they prompt you necessarily to pay for the person behind you. So it just kind of naturally ends when those snake trains begin. That is incredible that it could go on all day. That is a lot of generous, forward-thinking people in a row. That is very, very cool. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what your days look like in terms of all of our viewers this morning for Daily Drop-In, which we do every single morning, Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern, that we stream on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. And then also it becomes a episode on Teach Better Talk podcast. But if you could in any way try and do some sort of concept of paying it forward, that would be a really cool challenge to take on. It doesn't need to be something big like buying someone's meal. We understand that that's a huge thing, but gosh, even just leaving a note or, like putting a few extra dollars in a vending machine, like those small little moments of, hey, I just wanted to brighten your day. Sometimes we just forget to do them and then we forget how impactful they can be.
And who is the expert at doing that kind of stuff is Livia.
Oh,
I mean, I can open up my, my phone, whatever, and there'll be a DM from her or a text or something. Just, hey, I was just thinking about you. And it's just like, that is the most amazing skill that she has, to be able to make people feel so special. And it's not a phony kind of thing. She genuinely means it, and I love that about her.
There's a few interesting pieces to that, and I want to add some context, because if you're listening right now, if you don't know Liv is a member of the Teach Better team. She does a ton with our guest bloggers. She's a part of our mastermind. I mean, she just supports in so many different ways, but she also is somebody that does this on her own completely naturally. She's an administrator. She's a teacher. I mean, this girl has a full busy life. She has a full family. Her parents live in the same area that she lives in. I mean, she has every excuse in the book to be busy. And she's joining us actually for Daily Drop-In next Tuesday, which means she's waking up at 4 a.m. to join us, guys. She is West Coast, okay? But as she comes live, you're going to see it in her next Tuesday. I mean, truly, this woman just believes in trying to share appreciation and love. And I'd love to have her, I don't know if she'd be comfortable on a live video, share her why behind that, but it kind of came at a point in her life where it was kind of a wake up, I need to share my appreciation for people more often. And Holly, I find it so interesting how many people she does that for, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
She does it for me. I know that I get beautiful text messages and messages of appreciation from her that just fill you back up, but then she's doing it to you. And we have people in the comments Brianna and Karen are yep, me too. And it's how does she find the time? I
know. And like you said, she's going to be on next week, and it'll be 4 a.m. for her, and it's not going to look like it at all. You would think it would be middle of the day. She's going to be just ready to go and share all of her positivity with everyone. Absolutely.
Yes. And to be fair, I kind of think she's a little bit of a vampire, because she stays up all night. I talked to her and I was like, are you sure you want to come live? That's so early for you on the West Coast. Like, how does that work for you? And she's like, I don't even know that I'll be asleep by then. I was like, I don't understand what that means. It's 4 a.m. So like, what do you mean you may not have gone to sleep by then? What is, I don't understand.
Yeah, I know, because I'll look at like some of the timestamps on the stuff that she's sending, and I'm like, girl, go to bed.
Yes. But she doesn't sleep. Like, she's somebody who's like, oh, I got like 2 hours last night and I got all this work done. I'm like, I'm sorry. What? Like, she'll be like, oh, I was up till 1 a.m. I was like, they have one of those in at night too? Oh my gosh. Well, shout out to Liv. I'm hoping Liv is not live with us right now. It is very early. I hope she's sleeping and loving life. But Liv, if you are here or if you're listening to this after the fact, we love you. We appreciate you. And thank you for doing so much really by just sharing your time with people. Like, there are so many different ways we can share appreciation. And some of our examples earlier was a financial contribution to somebody else. The reality is the message of sharing a personal appreciation with somebody else with a green heart is something that Liv has just conquered the world with. And I so appreciate it, Liv. So thank you for all that you do.
Yes, we love you, Liv.
Now, Holly, we're going to get into the theme for the week. The theme for the week is all about communication, which kind of ties in beautifully to what we were talking about with Liv. Liv is incredible. She's an incredible example of somebody who chooses to communicate intentionally. And whether you're communicating intentionally because you're trying to share your appreciation and your love for other people, or communicating intentionally because you are striving to ensure that the students and the staff and the parents that you're working with this school year are comfortable and becoming an advocate for the work you're doing, both communication styles are so important. So we're going to transition here into our brainstorm bank and get into some of your questions. All right, really quick, you guys know how this works. This is our brainstorm bank. We set up a time in Daily Drop-In where we intentionally stop and say, hey, can we help you with anything? Obviously, we're here in the comments the entire time that we're live every single morning. You can throw your questions in here, whether it be about the Teach Better team or something that you are currently thinking through in your classroom or your school building. You can head over to teachbetter.com/brainstorm bank if you have a question that pops into your mind when we are not live all together. But if we are live, you can obviously also throw your question in the comments for us, and we do our best to try and monitor the chat, the whole conversation, to get you some support. We may not have all the answers, but we sure can try, I can tell you. So Holly, with the theme being communication, we've shared a bunch of different strategies for how we can communicate, but you are currently like in your classroom this week getting ready as a teacher. Your students come on Monday. What in the world are you doing to communicate for this fall?
Yeah, so one of the big things that we are for our team, so in our school, we are on teams. So we've got the 4 content areas together as one team. We have been talking about basically trying to be as simple as possible. And, because I know that there are some people that, okay, our LMS is Canvas and we're going to use Remind. And then we're also going to put stuff out on Twitter. And, it's all over the place. So we are, our district is also 1-to-1. So every student has a device. So we use Canvas. So we are going to, what we do is we create a homework and announcement course in Canvas. We put all the students in it. And parents have observer accounts, which is wonderful. So we can just push out any announcements or anything like that all through Canvas. So we're streamlining it, keeping it simple is really
okay, Holly, we are going to dive so much more into keeping it simple because that is an incredible piece of advice. I want to ask some strategic elements because as people are listening, I want everybody who's eager to find a solution for this dilemma to feel like they have the information to truly go and do it later this afternoon or next week in their classroom. So when you're using Canvas, which is an LMS, which everybody has different LMSs, Canvas is very popular. An LMS is just the learning management system you use. So it can be anything that helps you manage the work that you're pushing out to students, essentially. Canvas, you are creating kind of an additional space that is separate from the classes you teach for this homework and announcement. Is that correct?
Yes. So it is a separate course that we create in Canvas.
Nice. And so with this separate course, you're including homework and you're including announcements in that space?
Yes.
Awesome. And then who has access to put information in there? How does that work strategically? Because if you're on a team, that means there's like a bunch of different teachers. They might have a bunch of different announcements and homework. So how does that work?
So what we do is we divide and conquer, right? So each semester, each quarter rather, one teacher covers that quarter. And what we will do is we will just send an email to that teacher saying, here's what, for today's announcements for my class or whatever the, school announcements that we might have heard, throughout the day. And so one teacher posts one announcement onto the course per day. And it just keeps, like I said, it keeps it simple. So you don't have, okay, here's an announcement from science. Here's an announcement from social studies. Here's math. Here's that would just be too much.
Well, and the equivalent to not doing this is literally posting those announcements in the individual class. So as a parent, they would have to go into science, they'd have to go into social studies, they have to go into math, and all in separate, they would be seeing, okay, what's the homework? Okay, are there any assignments? It's a lot of button clicking. It's a lot of kind of like managing the LMS, which the parents aren't necessarily trained or confident to be able to do. You're creating one space that's one click and then one post a day or two, depending on how they're doing it, that is like, here is the homework that you need to have your attention and eyes on. Here's the announcements you need to have your attention and eyes on. Once you've read that, you're good to go.
Exactly. And it makes life so much easier. And they know, approximately when we're going to be sending these announcements. We try to do it at the end of the school day. So they know that sometime between 4 and 5, they should be getting an announcement from Teammate One. So yeah.
Well, and think about Holly, I actually want to get to Alex's comment because that adds a whole nother element of this. So let's talk about that quickly. But then I have another thought. Alex is asking, does the homework course help make sure students get an appropriate amount of work assigned? That's kind of the beauty of you working on a team, is because you're in that constant collaboration with other counterparts on your team. If you're assigning a lot of homework that day and then social studies assigning a lot of homework, you guys can actually adapt and see the student workload because you're in that collaborative environment. That's a huge positive.
Absolutely. And we do, when we meet together as a team, we're okay, we've got a test coming up, we're working on a project. So you can be very strategic about how you make your assignments. So it helps a lot.
And an element of this that I'm sure is helpful as a parent is that, everybody is so busy between the end of school, between dinner, right? Everybody's racing around to do different things. Homework is started at the kitchen table. There's all these different lifestyles that our families live, regardless of when they're able to see their child and ask them about their day. One of the things that they can do is just pull up this homework and announcements. And that's a great conversation starter. You know exactly what they kind of like started working on or might be topic wise working on in those classes. You're really facilitating good discussions at home too.
Yeah. And it's the other nice thing too is on Canvas, when you have for the parents, they can choose how they want to receive announcements. So they can get it as an email. It can come straight to their phone as an email. They don't even have to go into Canvas to see the homework announcement.
Yeah,
so that's something that makes it a lot easier too. They can choose how they want to get the information.
And you know what? Not only can they choose how they want to get the information, but it's one step for you that then personalizes for your families. Mm-hmm. And that's really what it comes down to. I was doing a keynote in a school district yesterday to kick off their Institute Day. And one of the things that we kind of touched on was Teachers Deserve It. It's the book that I wrote with Adam. And the reason it came up, yeah, have you ever heard of it? The reason it came up is because for those of you who may not know, Adam wrote a wonderful book called Kids Deserve It. And then we kind of followed up with this second tier of support called Teachers Deserve It a few years later. The reason that book was so important is because kids do deserve it. We should do as much as we can to allow students to be successful in every way, shape, and form. You see educators putting their blood, sweat, and tears into ensuring that students are successful. On the flip side, we wanted to add another element of this conversation is it also should be good for teachers, right? Because teachers are human beings. Teachers are incredible. We want to make sure that as kids get everything that they can to be successful, teachers are also getting what they need to be successful so that they can continue forward in a positive manner and not get burned out. And this element is a perfect example of that. This is not only good for kids, that things are simple and streamlined and very clear every single day, but it also allows the teacher to do one thing and it benefits lots of people in a variety of ways. So that's a great system that you put in place.
Yeah. So, and we're going to be doing it again this year. So yeah.
Oh, so good. So in terms of simplicity, if you're listening right now and you don't use Canvas or like anything like that, like these are all essentially different systems that look similar across platforms. So making things simple is really a skill in and of itself. How do you have any recommendations on how people even begin considering, like, are my current systems as simple as possible? That in and of itself is a big reflection question.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I would say just think about it from the perspective of the user, the end user. Look at how many clicks like you were saying, how many clicks do they have to do to be able to access the information? Is it coming out consistently? Is it coming out in multiple places? Just kind of look at from the perspective of the people that you're trying to reach, right? What do they need? And then try and think also what information is really essential. Like you're cut the fluff, right? What do you really want your parents to get out of this information? And then think of what is the easiest way to get from point A to point B.
I find it funny when we talk about like shoring up systems, because I think that teachers are professionals at like creating strategic systems. Like that literally management is an enormous element of teaching that I feel like isn't even discussed at the magnitude that it should be, because we are truly managers of tiny humans on a day-to-day basis. And that's an enormous skill. And this concept of like seeing the end result and working your way backwards is something that we do with standards. It's something we can easily do with communication. It's almost like you have to consider that the end user is going to be at their max capacity. They're already going to assume that they're already overwhelmed, assume that they've had a long day, assume that they're just trying to do their stinking best. And so as you're considering what communication they can be receptive to at that stage, work your way backwards and say, what is the essentials that they need and how can I get it to them in the most stress-free environment as possible, assuming that they are already at capacity, but trying to give their best to the people around them,
Yeah. And I also, I have the perspective of being a teacher and a mom. Mm-hmm. So I would look at the information that I was getting, from my kids from the schools and think, okay, how could I make this better?
Yeah.
And that's what I tried to implement into my practice.
Well, it's funny because, that you just added a whole other layer of that, choosing to communicate from teacher to stakeholder is a lane in and of itself, but communication goes to a variety of places. So looking at your simplified communication, teacher to student teacher, or leadership to staff. I mean, you can add this simplicity lens, this perspective, regardless to the type of who your audience might be, to any conversation. I know that my administrator that I recently worked with was a master at ensuring that there was almost no communication throughout the week, and there was only communication at the end of the week from leadership to staff. And that was kind of a filter of simplicity that he went through, saying, if I send an email Monday and Wednesday and Thursday, then a lot can be misconstrued, a lot can be lost in the dialogue. If I wait to the end of the week and I provide some consistency, which is what you alluded to earlier, then there's some expectation and I can put everything in one location for people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that is one thing that our school does, is there is a newsletter that comes out, and I'm not sure if they're going to be using the same time frame this year, but last year there was a newsletter that we knew, and again, as a parent, I knew I was going to get the parent version, and then I knew that I was going to get the staff version, on certain days, and I knew to expect them. So that way you're not sitting there, like you said, like checking your email. Why haven't I heard anything? Why haven't I? Because the newsletter is coming on this day,
So Holly, do you mind if I add another layer to this? I'd love to get your thoughts. We're talking about simplicity, And we talked about essentially streamlining where communication's going. And in an example that you gave a few minutes ago earlier in our discussion, you were kind of talking about putting things on one place here, and then it's over on Twitter where you're sharing something else, and then you share something else on Facebook. Is there ever a time and place where you'll have all those outlets, or should it be just one streamlined communication element?
I don't know. I think that it's one of those, that's a tricky one because people do have their go-tos. There are some people who Twitter is their thing. There are others who, I only look at my Facebook feed. So there are a variety, but I think that the way that we have things now, it's kind of one of those, and I don't know, I'm not the software tech person or whatever, but it seems like anymore you can kind of set it up so that you can push things out to go to the different venues and people can pick and choose where they want to get the information. We're just keeping, as far as our communication with our team, though, we're just figuring the kids are already in Canvas courses. So that's why we're going to keep it that way. But as far as like the school information that's being pushed out to the parents in the community, push it out to all of them. And that way people can get what they want.
Well, and I think that you're adding like kind of that layer that I was looking for is it really depends on what your goal is, right? If you are trying to collaborate on a team of other educators that have different classrooms, having one spot to gain that information is a beautiful, simplistic model. Whereas if your goal is to communicate to the widest audience possible, you might want to meet them where they're at. And so finding a program, which I think is an essential element that you noted, finding a program that will do that automatically for you, like, for example, like Buffer. There's a ton of them out there, but Buffer, for example, you log into, you link all your social media accounts, you click one button, it goes to all social media. So you're not spending time as a district leader posting on Facebook, opening up a new tab, posting on Instagram, opening up a new tab, posting on Twitter. That just becomes so tedious, you'll miss something. So again, finding those simplistic forms of communication is big. Another element, though, to add to that is also setting the expectation of what the communication is that they're getting. So for example, something I really love about the homework course that you set up with your team is that they know exactly what they're going to get when they log in. They're getting an update on homework and they're getting basic announcements that they need to know. But you guys also might choose to have like a team Instagram account. Well, they're not going to be getting announcements on homework on the team Instagram, but they might see smiling faces. They might see cool activities. And so that actually is two separate outlets of communication, but the goals of that communication are different, right?
Yeah. Looking at what is your purpose? Why are you sending it out? Yeah.
Very cool. What is your purpose? Why are you sending it out? Considering your audience. Mm-hmm. I love that. I feel like every year I found like a new way to tweak my communication. Like, can you reflect back to maybe, like your first or second year in the classroom, what your communication style was like versus now? Has there been an evolution, I guess is my question.
Yeah, there's definitely been an evolution in it. It went from when I first started, it was one person did it the whole entire time. And then, everyone was kind of scrambling because that wasn't on our minds all the time, because it was always one person doing it. And then when we decided, okay, and teams have changed, team members change and everything as teachers come and go. And then it was like, okay, we need to make this a little bit more equitable. We have 4 quarters, 4 teachers. What should we do? Yeah. So we, divide it up so that everybody has a stake in it so that we all understand the importance of getting the information to that person in a timely manner so that the information can go out at the right time, at that consistent time every day. Another thing that I do, and because I'm very much into color coding. I love color coding things. Kids come into my classroom and they're like, Mrs. Stewart, you really like a lot of color, don't you? I'm like, yeah, I do. But I, color code the classes. So that way it's really easy. Parents know if it's red, it's social studies. If it's green, it's science, and moving on. So they can kind of see that right there and go right to the one that they need to make it a lot simpler.
Well, and I think that is an incredible point. I'm so glad you brought that up because as we talk about communication, we're not just talking about text, right? We're talking about utilizing color as a beautiful example, some sort of visual to help people organize their thinking as they communicate with your, or as they interact with your communication. Color is a huge success, a huge element that we can utilize in our communication with parents, to students, to staff. That helps a ton. Is there any thought process with that, Holly? Like, how far do you take that? Is then every single thing related to whatever class was red, is everything red then forever? How do you do that?
I just think consistency. So if at the beginning of the year you make it that color, stay with it for that year. I mean, obviously you can change it up if you want to, but I have a template that already has it set up. So that's just the way that it works for me. And it makes it easy for me, so I don't have to rethink the whole system every time.
No, I think that's huge. I mean, whether it's color coding by course, color coding by class, like I know that a lot of educators are like, oh, yellow's my first hour and green's my second hour, whatever that is. Having a system and then clearly communicating that system to the student is really useful. But I actually like the course being color coded, because that's really a team mentality, right? If you're color coding your class hours, that's more of like my class structure. When you're color coding the course holistically, now you're in like a team structure. It's a different kind of approach to your communication. I like that bunch.
And I use the grid method in my classroom. And so I have my whiteboard has a grid, like we tape on it and everything like that to set up the grid up there. And for that one, I color code my students by class. So core 1 is a certain color, core 2 is a certain color. So they can, I get the visual to see, okay, which class is really struggling with this, to see where their magnets are on the grid. And the students also, for that student agency, when they need to find someone in their class to help them, if I'm busy working with another student, they can say, oh, I'll just look for the yellow magnet that has gone past the activity that I'm struggling with right now. And it helps the students as well. So, yeah.
Holly, I don't know if I have had this moment on my own and I'm just lost in this conversation, so I apologize, but you just added in an element of organization, right? Like organized, the way that you organize your classroom, you were talking about the grid being an element of communication. And in the time when you first said that, I was like, well, no, we just transitioned. Now we're talking about organization. But actually, being organized is an element of communication. Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, the way that you structure any element of your classroom management is actually an effective use of communication that you're utilizing with your students.
Yeah. Communication is not just, what's written on a piece of paper or what you say. It's also what you see. It involves all the senses. So, yeah.
So now we're adding in a whole additional element. Maybe I'm sorry if I just had this like mind-blowing moment on screen with all of you being a part of our daily drop-in this morning. But now you add in, I know, right? Adding in simplicity to the way that you organize your room, your planning, your staff notes. I mean, that element in and of itself really can add in a successful piece to your communication style, because simplicity in how something is organized is also an essential part of people being able to understand and take information away from that system.
Mm-hmm. And it does take time. I mean, that's another thing too. It's one of those things that you'll try something, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. And then you try something else. I know that all year last year, every single grid, there was a little bit of something that I did differently based on my students' feedback. I remember like going from one to another, I'd hand it out and they were like, oh, thank you, Ms. Stewart, for changing this part. That was really hard last time. I really appreciate it. So, constantly being aware and reflecting so that you can add that simplicity to it. And you can, because, when you first start something, it can seem overwhelming. You want to throw it all in. It's like, okay, whoa, let's take a step back and, break it down as to what is really essential.
Yes, I like Alex just pulled out this quote here that says communication is not what's on paper and involves all the senses. Karen's jumping in and saying, I love the idea that organization and communication involve all the senses. It truly is the case. And I love that you've added that element into our discussion around communication, because there's so many ways that we can share. And a big focus this week has been teachers identifying what's maybe easiest for them before we even begin to identify what we're going to communicate, right? Like what works well for you as an educator. Give yourself permission to start with what comes naturally to you and then move into that communication style. Holly, I think your focus being on being as simple as possible allows for us to not get clouded in all the things we're trying to communicate and really come from a perspective of what's the need to know, how do I make this as easy as possible, and then how can my audience really interact with this information so that it's easy for me to communicate that simple information and easy for them to consume it. That's a beautiful element to making sure that as we're all planning our communication style for our classrooms, ensuring that everybody involved in the educational ecosystem can be successful in this process. That's so cool.
Absolutely.
You know, Holly, our daily drop-in is Thursday today, right? August 12th. And we are slowly moving into then nearing the end of our week. We have Dr. Neil Gupta joining us tomorrow. Neil is a part of the Speakers Network, and he's been a part of the Teach Better family forever. I feel like he's my go-to, you know, like wonderful guy to brainstorm with me on any topic that is coming my way. He's an administrator in Ohio. If you're not connected to Neil, holy cow, you're in for a treat tomorrow. But I think he's going to add in a lot of different discussion, kind of wrapping up this confirmation of how we can communicate tips and tricks on how to do that. Next week, we are focusing on a different topic. And I really like these themes for the daily drop-in because it allows people to kind of share. So outside of kind of what we've discussed already, what's on your mind in terms of discussions that are like in a teacher's brain as we're getting set up for the year? Anything come to mind?
Sorry, I'm in my classroom.
Yeah, getting announcements. This is good. That's life, Holly. That's life.
They were actually just making an announcement that they're doing breakfast for us. So.
Oh, fun. Wait, what's for breakfast? We all want to come have breakfast.
I didn't get to hear what they were saying.
Bummer. The whole day is ruined.
It's
Holly
all
doesn't
good.
know what's for breakfast. Terrible, terrible.
But at least I have my coffee, so it's okay.
Yes, exactly.
I'm sorry. Can you ask your question again?
Absolutely. I was just thinking if anybody here wants to throw their ideas in the comments, or if Holly, if you have anything that you want to share of different themes that people are thinking through right now that might be helpful for us to include on Daily Drop-In. We've discussed kind of implementing a new idea. We're talking about communication. What other things do you think are on teachers' minds as the start of the year comes about?
I mean, I know that what always seems to come to mind is always that classroom management, right? You've got a whole new set of students that are coming to you. You know, you've already had that year with those students from last year. You've built those relationships, but just that whole, how do I get that back again? And how can I make it, you know, how can I continue to improve with that? So, and I'll go back to the relationships. That is the biggest thing that you can do at the beginning of the year. But I think that that's usually what's a major thing on teachers' minds is that whole classroom management part.
Oh, I feel like you just affirmed all of the things in my brain. That was so helpful, Holly, because truly focusing on communication, we've kind of touched on some of that management strategy, which I really love. Obviously, if any of you are listening right now or listening to this after the fact and you want to throw questions at us to help with any classroom management element that you're thinking through, let us know. But an element of communication, simplicity, organization that came up today, hopefully that gets you thinking about your management strategies. And then next week, it's like you knew, we're talking about relationships. We're talking about staff, students, and parents. Oh my, next week. So it will be so fun. We're kicking off next week with Dave and Katie Miglin, which will be so much fun. I know that Liv is joining us on Tuesday, and we just have a full week ahead of really good people. Hold on, hold the phone. I just checked. And Wednesday, Hunter Flesh is joining us. I think that's only funny, maybe only in my head, because my recommendation for next week, which I'm totally like going to ruin right now, was going to be Hunter's podcast. Now I totally can't recommend that because he's going to be the guest. That's funny. Anyway, so yes, we have some really fun people joining us next week to talk about relationships. So that will be a good discussion topic as we continue forward. Holly, if people want to stay connected, I know we talked about social media earlier. Is there a place that you can recommend that they go connect with you?
Twitter is really my educational space for being connected to other educators and teachers. So, and I'm Holly A. Stewart. Now, please notice that it's Stuart. So it's not the EW. So yeah, but it's Holly A. Stewart, keeping it simple. So
love it. So good. Holly, thanks for joining our daily drop-in. It's so much fun to kick off our morning with everybody and obviously talk shop with you. You're always so wonderful. So I hope you have an incredible start to your year. You said you have students on Monday, right?
Yes, students are coming in on Monday, ready to
We're
go.
ready. Oh, it's so fun. For everyone else, we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Have your last sip of coffee. We appreciate you. Make sure you brush your teeth before you head out of the house. And if you need anything, we're here to help. So please reach out to Holly or anyone else a part of the Teach Better family. We're always here to brainstorm and like make some connections for you no matter what you need. So thank you for all that you do. We appreciate you. We love you. And we'll see you again tomorrow bright and early because we are live for Daily Drop-In every single morning, Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern. All right, guys. See you later.
Bye.